Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Mary Claire Pavlik. I'm a rising junior at St. Louis University studying public health, and I'm excited to welcome Chef Eric Adjepong today. He has cooked in several Michelin star restaurants in New York after graduating with degrees in culinary arts and nutrition from Johnson and Wales, one of the country's premier culinary universities. He also holds a Master of Public Health and International Public Health Nutrition from the University of Westminster in London. He was first introduced to TV on Top Chef and was a finalist on season 16. He is now the host of Food Network's Alex vs. America and a judge on Chopped, Guy's Grocery Games, Supermarket Stakeout, and more. Eric is also penning his first cookbook with Clarkson Potter and partnered up with Penguin Workshop to write a kids' book that explores the culinary storylines of the African diaspora, peppered with kid-friendly recipes and visuals. Eric is a devoted and doting father to his daughter Lennox, and his family currently resides in Maryland. Eric is represented by Art Collective. Eric, if you can just state if you have any conflicts of interest, and then we'll get started.
No conflicts of interest. Thank you so much, Mary Claire. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good to go.
Perfect. Thank you so much again. Welcome, everyone, and thank you so much. I've heard some really great things. I was able to hop in a little bit earlier on, so I'm just super appreciative of Light for reaching out to me and thinking of me to do this segment. And it's about knowing better and really doing better and using your gift, the seed that's inside you, whatever it is that's your passion or your creative kind of outlet, to not only fend for yourself and create a life of meaningfulness and something that you can support yourself financially, but then also use that gift for a greater good. Use your gift as a gift for others, and especially in public health, I think that's such a huge opportunity and a really good kind of like path and avenue where you can find your passion, your creative kind of outlet, and find a way to kind of use that to better help your community, whether it be at large or at a grand scale. So that's pretty much what I did with my background. I grew up in New York City as a West African kid. My folks come from Ghana in West Africa, so I was the first person born in my family here in the States. And I used that. I had no idea back in the day that I was going to be a chef, but I knew that I had a passion for food. And I knew that I was always just interested in the molecular and the science and the creativity behind making a really delicious plate and serving it to people, and that communal aspect behind serving food as well. So I really fell in love with the entire aspect of the food industry. And with me and what I've learned, especially in the creative side of things, there's always a craftsmanship. There is always a start. There's always a rubrics, a formula, so to speak, on how in which you find your niche and you find your talent, and then you hone it and you work on it a tremendous amount of time, 10,000 hour theory. But when you get to that point, when you can almost kind of like do whatever it is, whether you're a photographer, whether you are a writer, whether you are a painter, whether you are a chef, and you can almost kind of like do those things second nature. They almost kind of feel like it's you can kind of do those things, those motions, those whatever it is that your craft kind of calls for. Look with your eyes behind or with your hands behind your back, or with your eyes closed. Then at that point, you can start to kind of like play with the little. You can play within the lines, or create or color within the lines, so to speak, or create a little bit of jazz. There in which we can get super creative and really start to input your own personality, your own spin, your own creativity on things. And that's almost like the ultimate goal personally when it comes to creativity is finding what it is that drives you, what it is that is that wakes you up or keeps you up at night, and the things that keeps you up during the day and it just keeps you going. Finding that it factor, honing it, like and really taking it that craft or whatever it is, that passion, full steam ahead. And then that last piece, that beautiful piece, is how can I use that to really better and empower the world? And that's really how I did it. I fell in love with culinary arts again at a really young age, and I went to school at Johnson Wales University in Providence, Rhode Island. And when you know better, you do better. Kind of going back into the theme of today, I really just wanted to bridge the gap between the cooking and the technical part of culinary arts and the service and the hospitality. I love all of that, but then there's a huge responsibility that chefs play and have when it comes to really being stewards of the world. When you think about how chefs are involved in our everyday lives, we are there for your big anniversaries. We're there for the graduations. We're there for the weddings. We're there for the big celebrations. So we have a major responsibility in the communities that we cook in and the communities that we serve. But I think beyond that responsibility, we also have in mind that we all eat. We all should be fending for ourselves. We all should find ways to uh, better the food that we ingest, and really in how we can better the food that our community takes in as well. So that's super important, and that was super important to me, and wanting to kind of bridge that gap. I got back to New York after my Johnson Wales stint, and I really wanted to kind of work in the best restaurants I can get my hands on. Again, kind of feeding both sides of the fence, so feeding both masters, really understanding the craftsmanship behind executing a really fine dining restaurant and what that looks like. But then I moved to London. I moved to London, England in 2012, and I wanted to study for my master's in public health nutrition. And I did that at the University of Westminster. And really at that point, guys, my goal was to really just kind of, again, bridge that gap and really kind of color in that Venn diagram, so to speak, between the technical side and then the public health side, because I thought there was a really big opportunity, not only for myself, but really to be an ambassador, to be a steward for chefs and people. There are not many chefs that I know who have public health degrees. So you can cook, and that's a great thing. But how intelligently can you speak? How much with authority can you speak to these really pressing matters that are facing the world today? We have climate change. We have global warming. We have actual famine in the world still to this day. There's and even in the most amazing country in the world, there are pockets of places here in the United States that are people are still hungry and are looking for food, and food apartheids and really food places that are stressed. I don't like using the term food deserts, but places that are really lacking. And I think, again, as a chef, it's almost like I call it a civic duty, so to speak. You have your job, you have your profession, your vocation, but then you also have a duty to self, and it should be always something bigger than you. You always have something. Of course, you want to make sure that you're fulfilling all your goals and doing everything as best as possible. But what is the bigger purpose? What else can I do here on this planet, on this earth, to be a better citizen? And again, using your skills in whatever capacity. If you are a writer, how can I dive into the world of public health and really amplify a voice or amplify a story? Or maybe I can go find a scoop. If I'm a painter, how can I use my skills to really shed light on a really important matter? How I've done that recently, I've worked with great organizations like Territory Foods that focuses on at home meal delivery services that do paleo and vegan and vegetarian and any sort of restriction as far as diets is concerned. And they really wanted to focus in on active people who are really busy in work and life, parents, single moms, guardians, wherever the case is, and want to eat something super nutritious, but may not have the time to really get there or even cook that meal. So they do a great chef networking opportunity, and they have a great network all throughout the country, and they do an awesome job. I also work with Bowery Farming, which is an incredible, oh my gosh, I get so excited when I think about Bowery. They're an incredible indoor hydroponic organization, and you might see them in your local grocer, Wegmans, Whole Foods, Safeway, Trader Joe's, and they just do greens really well. It's pretty nuts. They actually just opened up their second facility, but they have two sites, one in Maryland and one in New Jersey, and it's almost like this. If you can imagine an IKEA size room full of just plants that are growing vertically, and the sustainability factor is just so amazing. I mean, the fact that we can grow in an urban population that much greenery, that much lettuce, that much herbs, it's so cool, and it's so fun to think about all the opportunities that can really happen with the folks in the communities in Maryland and in New Jersey as well. So I'm really excited and just. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. So I thought somebody asked a question. So I'm really excited to work with them and really have that partnership going on. My work with the World Central Kitchen and Chef Jose Andres, which is he was a huge reason that I moved to London and really wanted to kind of hop into the public health space. He is just a pioneer, a visionary, the only chef in the entire planet with a Nobel Peace Prize, and so well deserved. He is just he's a leader, and he means so much to me and to so many people, and truly a remarkable being, and is there on site no matter what it takes, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's South Korea, whether it's in any sort of crisis down in any sort of natural disaster. He and his team are there. First things first, and they look to serve. They look to serve people with their skills. Again, food, and being there on the ground, and supplying people with what they need, whether it's drinks, whether it's again meals, and they do such a great job. So my work with them is something that I cherish, and I'm so proud of as well. And really, lastly, the last thing I wanted to really talk about is having fun with it and using that creative medium to really kind of amplify yourself. I think one of my favorite books talks about finding your skill, finding your what your craft is and your mastery, and being a master at that, but then also using that craft or that skill to help other people. But when you can do that, and you can do that in a really great way, you kind of like open up a tertiary box, almost like a Pandora's box, where you get acknowledged, and you also get sought after for that skill. So you promote yourself in a very great way, but you're also promoting a great work as well. You're promoting a great effort, a great project. And I think really when you do that, then everything kind of hits on all cylinders. And it's super important to kind of keep that in mind. So it's not just, again, the work that you do for yourself. Obviously, you want to be the best at what you can. I always strive to be the best chef that I can be. But I always have in mind that there's a bigger goal, and there's a bigger purpose for me. And it could be a spiritual thing. It could be you and your God, you and the universe, or just you and yourself, and really understanding that you are a very, very important piece to your community. You are a very important piece to your family or to your work site, and what you can do with your skills and your skill sets that pretty much nobody around you can do. You have to find a way to really shine and amplify that as much as possible. I love cooking. I love food. I'm really excited about all the projects that I have coming up. And again, trying to find ways to weave public health and public health awareness around food from where I come from, the African diaspora, and the Caribbean, and a little bit of the West Indies as well, and the American South. I love talking about those stories. I love sharing those stories. But there's a huge public health aspect to that as well, and where the food comes from. Why it's important for folks to know and understand the food that we eat and know and love. That's kind of woven into the fabric of American, the lexicon of American diets and food. I think about gumbo. I think about shrimp and grits. These are all classic African dishes that have made their way and kind of like become American dishes as well. And there's a huge public health kind of story to tell about that, and that story between how that food has kind of migrated into the new land, and what that has done to our bodies through like generations and years past that. So there's so many great stories, and I think culinary arts and food is a great medium for that. And I think when you again can build that gap and then put everything together, you're really setting yourself apart. So yeah.
Okay, great. Does anyone want to ask any questions? You can drop them in the chat, and I'll ask them to Eric.
Lucy, the children's book. So yes, it is. Man, it's so crazy. When I was the book idea was proposed to me, I was like, doing two books at one time? Yeah, absolutely. That'd be the greatest idea. It's a lot of work, but I'm having such a great time with it because it's such a project that, one, I never really thought I would be able to do. Or representation matters, and when I was younger, I never saw a cookbook like this that I'm writing for anyone that looked like me, or anyone that looked like me. So I'm really like excited and proud to kind of almost write a letter to my younger self, so to speak. So it's a story. It's a fictional story, but it's very much almost like an autobiography. It's a story about me, and it's fictionalized with our character who is in middle school, and the story kind of opens up where he's in school, he's in class, it's a Friday, and his teacher is super excited about the potluck that they're planning for the next Monday. And the teacher is just making sure that all the students are aware, the potluck, make sure you're cooking with your family over the weekend and bring your national dish or your a famous dish from your country back home or back to school on Monday. Kofi, is the protagonist, he's super kind of shy and not really proud about the food and the culture that he comes from. But he has a very eclectic group of friends, Italian, Hispanic, African American, and they're all super excited about the food that they're going to be bringing in, and they're just walking home and they talk about it. So through the book, Kofi finds more about himself, his culture, where he comes from. He speaks with his grandfather. They go out to the market. They touch, they smell, they eat the food, and they become very, very in tune with it. And there's a complete 180 with Kofi, where he's just so proud at the end of the book of the food that his family cooks, and the food essentially that is a part of his culture. And he goes in there and absolutely kills it for the potluck on Monday, and then it's all good from there. So it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of good stuff in between, but I'm really excited about the book, and it should be out next year, hopefully October around this time, or October this next year. Thank you, Lucy. I appreciate it. It's really fun. It's super exciting. Funny enough, this morning got my illustrations for it, and it looks absolutely amazing. So I can't wait for everyone to see it. Share it. A little of my health routine. Absolutely. Yes. I make it a point to wake up early. I think some of my management team is here. They'll probably attest to that as well. I'm up maybe like 5 a.m. Trying to get like admin stuff done so I can get a lot of like the computer stuff out the way. And then I like to kind of get into the gym as early as possible. It's a lot easier said than done. Please don't be impressed. I don't do it as often or as diligently as I should, but it's a habit that I really love to kind of work at, and just wake up and kind of get the day started with some physical activity. So I head to the gym. I love to play basketball, so I'll probably just shoot some hoops, do a little bit of strength training, or get on the treadmill for a little bit. Then there's always a smoothie protein shake right after that. Nice shower, and then I try to eat very, very like light during the day. Salads, grilled chicken. I might do just something like a protein base with very little carbs, or like very heavy on the vegetation. Vegetables, grilled, something super light. And then I try not to eat super late. My goal is to have my last meal by like 8:39. That kind of doesn't work all the time, being in the kitchen in the restaurant, especially late nights. But well, again, discipline is the name of the game. So I do my best with that. But it's tough. I know so many good friends, chefs, who make amazing meals, and it's so hard to say no. And I have a really, really, really big sweet tooth. So yeah. May you share if you find healing in cooking, or is there anything that you lean on when cooking when it comes to healing and your health? That's a really good question. I always look at food as medicine. A line that I love is, let food be their medicine. And the one that I really love as well is, pay your farmer now, or you pay your hospital later. And I'm always trying to find ways to use food as holistically, use food as, I guess holistically is the best word, from as best as possible. And I think there's a lot of things, especially with the food that we throw out, that can be used for so many health benefits. Teas and simple example, very, very simple example, but one that can go very far for anybody. Herbs. When you buy herbs from your local grocer, rosemary, basil, thyme, those stems that we often just kind of throw away after we get the fresh basil and the leaves off. Those have tremendous antioxidant capability, properties, excuse me. And, making them into a simple tea, just steeping them in some hot water for 45 minutes releases all of that. And not only are you kind of stretching out and kind of getting the most out of the products, and you're not just using the leaves and kind of throwing the stems away, but you're really aiding your body, and you're removing free radicals, and again kind of just oxidizing your body as much as possible, as naturally as possible. So there's so many great examples like that, and food is amazing in that way. And I always encourage folks, even on a more political side, about things. Talk to your local statesmen, congressmen, about even bringing food into prescription when it goes to the hospital, and having nutritionists really step up and seeing there's more kind of Eastern style medication where they can bring in food and a diet regimen or a plan, so to speak, rather than going straight to pills and drugs and more harsher, I guess, more harsher options that could lead into like more serious side effects. So I love that route when it comes to healing. I try to, again, do my best, and my mom is masterful at this, and it's probably something that I admire, because these are things that I learned in my later time in school, but these things that my mom has been doing, and her mom and generations before has been doing since like Jump Street. My mom does not throw anything away. It's almost, she should teach a class on like conservation. It's almost like, it's very, very impressive. But she makes, and she gets great use out of everything. Like I think of ginger. She even saves the skin of the ginger and uses that as a tea. And again, like it's just amazing to kind of see the creativity. But then I think about like that way of eating, and that the type of like idea around culture and food. And I think about where my mom comes from in Ghana. And I think about the people that live there, and they live for so long because of that diet, because of these like practices. And a lot of it has to do with the food that they put into their bodies, and the food that they've been, the folks behind generations, their ancestors have been putting into their bodies as well. So the Western diet has definitely changed. And I think keeping that in mind, always, there's a lot more sugar, there's a lot more fat, there's a lot more everything. But using those very humble and simple techniques when it comes to the food that we all eat, I think can really help and go a long way as far as kind of like making yourself aware, and just staying as healthy as possible. But then, again, doing better with the food that we have. That's a really good question, Stacey. Good stuff. Thank you. Can I share how failures helped me grow and overcome limiting beliefs? I think we all suffer from that. One of my favorite lines is from a song by Erykah Badu, and she says, "I'm an artist as I'm sensitive about my S," and it's so true. As a creative, you're always very sensitive about the work that you do, but you need to put it out there. It's so important. You can't create art and just keep it for yourself. You can, but for it to be admired, it really needs to be viewed by the masses, and you just have to put yourself out there. And again, that kind of goes back to the skill, the basics, understanding whatever that craft is, the 1, 2, 3s, the ABCs of that. When you're working with photography, the ISO, the aperture, the lens, the shutter frame, like all that stuff, and how to kind of like find that magic in between, all that matters. And when you can really like know and fine tune every single cog, and whatever it is your craft. Me as a chef, like I have to know how to sear. When something's medium rare, I have to serve it medium rare. I have to know how to braise. But when I can do all these things confidently and know these techniques confidently, then my creativity comes in, and only Eric can do Eric food, and that confidence is there, because it really kind of you put a battery in your own back, so to speak, and you try to do that humbly, and you try to continue to work at it. But the more you do it, and the more hours and repetition you have, I think it kind of just leans into the more confidence you feel within yourself, and things become second nature, and you become super dangerous at that point.
had a quick question. I was wondering, so I know you have a young daughter, what cooking for your family looks like, especially after, I mean, you're cooking all the time, what it's like when you go home.
Yeah. My daughter is the she's like the fakest cook of all time. She will try to cook everything, but we're having a hard time trying to feed her right now. She's very picky, but she loves to be in the kitchen. She's baking all the time. She's always requesting that we bake something. When I'm making breakfast in the morning, she has a little step stool and she comes up then and she's right there, and she's like stirring or she's just asking questions. So I really love that, and that curiosity I think is just so cool, especially at a young age. She knows about every single fruit and vegetable under the sun, but she's not eating it, which is funny. So we're working on that. But it's a lot of fun, and me as a chef now and having a child myself, it's so cool to kind of like understand her palate and really kind of like try to find the spots where she loves to eat, and she likes salty, she likes texture, she likes crunch. So like really trying to like work at that, but then also help and support other things, other textures and flavors that she may not be familiar with. So I love it. It's a really cool experiment. Her taste buds are just like super fresh, so I'm having a great time with it. And it's really cool. I think for me, I want to make sure that everything that she eats, like I have an understanding of it. So even if I'm not making it myself, I'm very trustworthy of the brands and the products that I'm using. So reading the label, taking an extra 30 minutes at the supermarket, you may not have that much time, but if you can sneak in an extra 20, 30 minutes and really like assess what you're buying and essentially putting into your family's bodies when it gets back home, that goes a long way. All these little things go a long way. So I'm confident all the time in her diet, and we go and she obviously does her checkups, and she's flourishing. So it's really cool to have that responsibility, but then also to foster that kind of curiosity in food in a really young child. Ellen, hey Ellen, Eric, what is your favorite dish to cook for a loved one, and who would you? Okay, cool. We do that. My favorite dish to cook for a loved one. I I love making pasta. I also love making um, like ta-da dishes, like a presentation. So if it's like a big duck breast or a big like snapper fish just in the middle and kind of everyone dig in, I love that communal aspect. So my number one goal is to just have like multiple hands in the center of the table where everyone's like ripping and serving each other, and there's that interaction, there's that kinetic energy, there's that pace that's happening at the dinner table. I think when you have that setting and there's great food around it, as important as the food is at the dinner table, I know this is going to sound pretty silly coming from a chef, especially as important as the food is at the dinner table. To me, I feel like it's the sidekick. Really, the number one thing is the experience, the laughter, the memories that are built with the people that you love, and the food obviously helps in that. It's like the ultimate kind of like cherry on top. And when you kind of have that perfect combination, then to me, I think that's a successful outing. So whatever I can do to kind of get that communal aspect in, that's my number one thing. But it's probably like a big ta-da kind of thing. So like a lamb roast, or like snapper, just something just really wow, and a bunch of like accoutrements on the side. Lucy, can you speak about the public school breakfast lunch programs, the quality, waste, etc., and the ideas on improving them? Really good question. I worked for a fantastic company in New York called Red Rabbit when I moved back from London. And Red Rabbit at the time, and I believe it might even gotten higher, we were serving 20% of the New York City food, New York City kids, their breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it's actually a devastating situation when it comes to especially public food, public schools and the food that's served there. Uh, in DC, I might be misquoted, but I believe the average meal for a student, I think, is like maybe under $2 or $2.50. And we're talking about like carbs, we're talking about drink, we're talking about vegetable. It's not very robust and it's not very nutritional dense. So just finding different ways to incorporate and actually put dollars into the nutrition program, put dollars into school cafeteria and their facilities and the people that are cooking the food and the programs, like the people actually developing the menus as well. I think there's a tremendous opportunity for all of that, and to really like
Okay, so I have another question. So, what is your favorite part of using the culinary arts to increase equity and why? Or do you like what role do you think culinary arts plays in equity?
I think culinary arts plays a huge role in equity. There is uh, a very humble approach to being a chef and really being in the culinary industry and the restaurant industry. You don't necessarily need to be high degree. You don't need to go to school for 10 years. You don't need that. So there's a lot of equity that can be built within the restaurant. I think folks who deserve second chances. I think folks who are struggling to even catch up to par. I think they have a huge opportunity to work, hone a skill that is really used and can be serviceable anywhere in the entire world. If you're a chef, you have a job, or you can make people eat everywhere and need to eat everywhere. So you can hone a skill that is it can be used, and you make yourself valuable in that way. And I think it really starts from the bottom up. It really starts from the grassroots efforts. It starts from taking raw talent, taking people who might just be super interested in the field and really like elevating them as much as possible to points where they can be executive chef, sous chef, or create a business on their own. And I think that's where you see the equity kind of come in. It's not something that happens overnight or like just with a shake. It needs to be developed. It needs to be systematic. It needs to be something that is conditioned over the years. And I think when you can repeat that and really kind of build a rhythm of folks who are other, and that really can go for anything, gender, race, sexuality, anything. It can go and really see an eclectic kind of like voice from the culinary world. I think, like with all aspects and with all kind of spaces, uh, the more diverse it is, the the more equitable it is, and the more people want to buy in because at some point someone can recognize themselves within the crowd, and I think that representation is extremely important, not only for financial but for social improvement and empowerment as well.
Great. And then what does your sort of day-to-day look like? I know you work with Food Network and you're obviously cooking all the time. So like what's your balance look like?
Not a lot of sleep, but that's okay. I bounce around quite often, especially with doing the show. We're doing the second season of Alex versus America. So I was in California and I was living the California lifestyle for a few weeks, less than a month, just a little less than a month as we were shooting. But quite often I'm just doing private events. I was lucky enough to do a really cool like album kind of like I forget the name. It's Rock Nation, so they're like a music label. So stuff like that. It's just really like one-off things that are really awesome. The cookbook has seriously taken over my life, like with all with all regard, every hour of my day, and I don't even know how I'm doing it. Actually, I do. I have an amazing team behind me: a co-author, my agent, my literary agent, my recipe developer. They are the reason that this book is going to be out. So I have all the things for them as well, and planning for the future as well. I have a lot of great projects that are on the horizon, and a lot of great partnerships as well that I'll be excited to announce when everything is official. But I look to just continue to just cook great food, make people happy, and make myself happy as well. That's super important. I think that's good. Yeah. Any aspirations for the future? Yes, Andrea, thank you so much. I really would love to continue to build this brand that I have, and hopefully kind of build it to the next level. I would love to see products. I'd love to have a restaurant eventually, and really start getting things in like the physical space as well. So I really just want to continue to cook great food and then also be a better chef. I think ultimately, like it's this craftsmanship is one that doesn't die. I can't stop learning. There's always new techniques. There's always new flavors. There's always something new to pick up, and that's really exciting for me, and it really should be exciting for any creative, and because you can't stop learning and you shouldn't stop learning. So that's what I always aspire to. It sounds very cliche or it might even sound corny, but I look forward to being a better version of a chef. I look forward to that as well. And hopefully all of that, when if that pot melts and kind of does what it does in that stew of trying and effort, hopefully I have like a nice big brand, and I'm doing some really fun things, and you might see my face on TV a little bit more. So top five favorite kitchen gadgets. A spoon, number one. I cannot live without a spoon. It's like the extension of my hand that doesn't get hot or can burn. So I can't cook without a spoon. Uh, I'm gonna give you some really like basic, but just a knife, a chef's knife, a sharp one. Can't do much work without that. So spoon and knife. I love a good offset spatula, especially when I'm cooking like fish or like scallops or something really like delicate and dainty. Those offset spatulas that can kind of like flip in your hands, those are really useful. A garlic press. They might get a lot of flack, but those things are so handy, especially in a pinch. And you can do so much with it as well. You can press like ginger, you can press turmeric, press garlic. You can actually make gnocchis if you wanted to as well. Boil the potatoes and press it through that and get your gnocchi on. So garlic press is always handy. And then I think that's one, two, three, four. Five. My handy dandy toaster oven. I got a pretty cool one, and I'm using it all the time. And it's just like the ease of use is just it's so good. So I love a good like toaster oven that can just like get super hot and stay hot. That's probably my top five right there. I love that one. Good job, Lucy. Thanks. Stacy, is there any advice you may want to share for current future chefs or those wanting to engage in the culinary arts? Uh, 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 just study, and get better and keep studying. That's like I have books that I've yet to read, and I'm still like a nerd. I'm like I just be a student. That's the best advice I can literally give anyone. Continue to be a student. Don't ever think that you know it all. And when you do feel like you know it all, then you might be in trouble because that's the point where you probably will get past and you kind of lose your footing. So always just be hungry for knowledge, and always try to find different perspective around your craft as well. Like there's so many different ways to think about food, and I love to listen to other chefs talk about food and where they come from. You know, I was speaking to a chef from Brazil the other day, and just just the spirit and the like the passion Chef Brian Gomez was telling me and talking to me about was just like it was almost like I started my like love for culinary arts all over again. And I've been doing this for years, right? And yeah, I'm speaking to another chef that's been doing it for years, but he's just like a kid, and he's very giddy when he talks about food and especially his love for his country in Brazil. So like that passion, you know, it's cool to know that there's someone like me in probably like in Brazil or on the other side of the world, and it's cool to connect with that kind of like with that type of like network, so to speak. So yeah, study and just always be curious, always just be hungry, no pun intended, and yeah, I think good things will happen from there. It's really like uh, bad work has not failed anybody, and just work hard, or I mean hard work, excuse me, hard work has not failed anybody. So we're working hard and really like studying your craft, I think whatever you want is going to come your way. Yes, Brazil. Okay. What is the most nutritious and easy cook recipe you recommend for life and healthy? I have I have my cookbook recipes on my mind. This is the first thing that popped up. I have a really cool recipe. It's super simple to make, but it's probably one of the most like flavorful and nutritionally dense meals you can have. It's a curry coconut um, chickpea stew. And you can substitute the chickpeas for like shrimp or any sort of protein. But I love this vegetarian approach to the dish because it packs a lot of protein, plant protein with the chickpeas. Obviously, legumes, I feel like they're just the nature's way of just giving you protein for extremely cheap. It costs you like 20 cents to buy, like to eat, you know, to get like 8 grams of protein versus buying a steak or anything like that. So you use that. There's coconut. It's cooked down with curry and tomato paste and ginger aromatics from ginger and peppers and scallion and thyme and all that gets cooked down. And I love this recipe specifically because the chickpeas, it's almost like bulletproof. You can't overcook them. And if you do, I'll be extremely impressed because they can take like so much. They can take so much like a heat really, and they can sit in that curry for so long. So have you ever had something that like actually tastes better the next day, like a marinara sauce, right? If you had it and you cooked it and you kind of put it in the fridge, it almost tastes like it was like better the next day. The same thing happens with this stew because the chickpeas soak up that curry, and if you make it, it's delicious. You eat it right away. But if you like put it in the fridge and let those flavors kind of like say hello and shake hands and get better the next day, you're like completely blown out, and it's so good. It's like the dish that gets better and better. So I'd say that, and it's very, very simple. I think you can do it within 30 minutes. The 30-minute challenge. If I can challenge Rachel Ray to that, then yeah, that'd be the one. So that'd be my dish right there. I throw in like mustard greens or kale, some wilted kale in there, and it's just super easy. You can eat it with like a bowl of rice, or you can just eat it as is, and you won't be unhappy. Always satisfied. So yeah. How has success changed your life? A lot of creative people fear success somehow. Um, I'm in the same bedroom that I grew up in right now. I'm in the Bronx, New York. This is how I stay humble. I just connect. Like I'm literally in the same bedroom I grew up since I was like 12. And I came here to visit my family, my parents, but staying grounded, knowing where I come from, and uh, I think like I think that to me, I don't get faded by this. And to be honest, like I try to downplay whatever success it is because I want to just keep myself at least mentally under the radar that there's always more work to do. I don't want to get content with being successful because no, that's not the way I operate. So I love to connect, come back home, eat home food, like eat food from my mom and my aunts, and connect with friends that I love and family that I love, um, and not to get too big for my bridges because I also know that like this is very fickle as well. My skills and and what I've learned and my I guess uh, value to the world is always going to be there, but success, quote unquote, and what people see on TV, it can be very fickle sometimes as well. So understanding that there's that side of the fence and that keeps me humble and wanting to be better, I think that's a decent formula. Yeah.
Okay, I have another question. So, what do you think makes culinary arts so unique, especially in terms of health and overall well-being? Because it's a unique kind of platform.
Yeah, I think culinary arts is so unique. You know why? Because it's probably next to music, the only creative medium that occupies all five senses. So you smell food, you hear the sizzle, you taste it, obviously, you're touching the textures. Like all of that is being like, and if it's a really good meal and a really good experience, you're kind of like getting that sensory overload with all five senses at the same time. And that like is a pretty significant, that's a cool thing, right? And I love that like that aspect. I love that kind of like control or mastery that I have with almost invoking feeling to someone and in that way. It sounds very granular and very like very small, but I really think about food in that way. That I can help maybe change or elevate or invoke a feeling in someone or people, and that's really really cool. So when it comes to public health and really that greater good, I think that's right there is a huge like leg up, especially with food, like just going hand in hand. People need to eat, and and people want to eat in a way that um, they feel like decent human beings, right? They want to eat, they want to take their time. I think people still like the aspect of sitting down. I think of my favorite meals that I've ever had. They're always with someone else, right? It's good to eat by yourself once in a while, but like the best meals I've ever had are always with company. So I think about that, and that also has to do with public health too. How we communicate and that social aspect behind that community as well is really important. So that's a really, really, really good question. I love that question. I think for me, it's just kind of just trying to put all of that together in the best little package.
Did you picture when you were younger, like any sort of career like this, or like what did you have in mind?
Yeah. Yes, I did. I really did. Um, I didn't picture all of this happening now, like this fast. So I joke, especially with my parents, that I got to start setting some new goals. But I always saw this for myself, especially when I locked in on the idea of wanting to be a chef. Like I knew that this was something that was very, very likely or possible. The TV stuff, probably not so much. But again, as I was mentioning before, like the harder you work, the luckier you get. And I was just like 100% into like being better, being the best chef, cooking the best food, making the best meals, and people saw that, and that was recognized. And so I did see this happening. The specific kind of like chapters, and probably not, but the book itself, I really, really kind of see that I saw this happening. Yeah, definitely. And I believed it too, which is super important.
And presentation. When we talk about culinary arts, the artist, the creative side is emphasized, but for someone at your level, I always get this sense that you draw on science as well, and that is a convergence of art and science to the extent that you start looking at product. People invite chemists to help look at how different materials come together. I wonder how much of science you draw on as you begin to experiment, and in ways that is beyond its arts and science in a way.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Collins, and thank you so much. It goes hand in hand. You mentioned is the culinary and the arts. The arts is you know the subjective part. The art is subjective. People go to different restaurants for different tastes. You may be feeling Mexican over Peruvian, over African, over Brazilian food one day, but the culinary, the technical part needs to be consistent everywhere you go, right? So if you ask for something that is seared, or if you're asking for something that is braised, I don't care what restaurant or what flavor profile, that's what you expect, right? If you want something toasted, it better be toasted, not like soggy, right? So that science is super important. understanding how to get that Maillard browning effect, that sizzle, that caramelization. Whether you're biting into like a steak from, that's coming off a grill in a steakhouse, or you're coming off of a barbecue pit in Kansas City. That char and that bark needs to be there, and understanding how to like achieve those different textures and flavors, and understanding the science of taste buds as well. Oh my gosh, I love this question because I get so nerdy about it. Like there's a certain like salt balance on our tongue. It's like 0.6, right? So anything above that is actually going to taste good. Anything below that's going to taste bland. So understanding that is also part of the science as well. Like uh, our bodies are made up of water, so we want to hydrate. So eating things that are super refreshing, especially in summer, that beautiful cucumber salad is always going to taste a lot better in the summertime than it is in the winter. Like those little things about science and understanding the body and understanding food can turn a really decent dish into an amazing dish, or an amazing dish into like a legendary one. So I think when you really can kind of put that much heart and earnestness into a dish, and not just like, it's cool just to cook something and just to sustain yourself, but as a chef, like if I can really like put in time and figure out why this dish is going to taste good to everyone, and how I can achieve that, and how I can incorporate science and really kind of bridge the gap between science and flavor and technique and creativity, then yeah, it's a lot of fun that way. So culinary it encompasses the science, it encompasses the technique, but the arts is the subjective part, and it's the flavor, and it's why we all kind of go different places and eat different places every day. So yeah, I love that question, and that's really how I bridge the two.
Thank you. I might ask one more, since you are on the intersection of not just the arts and science, but different region, and you took Africa, and then you talk about Brazil and the US, and we will say in Nigeria that cassava is to Nigeria what potato is to the US in terms of the multiple role it plays. And I wonder if you can speak to some of the ways you've introduced what might be what is normative in, say, Ghana, but getting the American population to begin to understand the contribution it offers.
Yeah, um, and that's another really fantastic question. I think it's the commodity that we use, and we every country is sort of known for their offering, especially when it comes to food. Um, and in West Africa, you mentioned Nigeria, Ghana, the same thing. uh, there are these commodities that almost are like building blocks to a lot of the recipes and a lot of the things that we eat. Peanuts are incorporated in a lot of the food. Like you mentioned, cassava is incorporated. It's not just the yam itself, it's the leaf, the cassava leaf. You know goosey very well from Nigeria. I do as well. Goosey is a cassava leaf stew. So if you may not use cassava leaf or find cassava leaf here, like in America, spinach is the perfect substitute. Escarole is the perfect substitute. So understanding that, you may not achieve the same like traditional recipe, but you can still achieve a very similar flavor profile and texture profile with like the substitutions and things like that. So I think understanding the the ingredient, the product itself, and then also like there's a mango, but there's also like 200 different versions of a mango all across the world that look and taste and smell and different, right? So where I'm kind of going with that is, really like understanding the full kind of history of that product and how it can be used in so many different ways gives you almost like a cheat code, because you have like a strong confidence in knowing what you can cook and how you can use this to taste as good as it can. And using those products, like you mentioned, cassava leaf, tomatoes, strawberries. These are things that have made its way. Rice used to be braided, and the hairs of enslaved Africans were brought here to the New World, and that's why rice is so big, especially in the South. So those kind of things and those stories make a huge bout of cultural significance to not only food from Africa, but food that comes from America. And I love that about American food too, because it's such a huge melting pot. There's so many stories from China, from India, from Canada, from Mexico, from how food has kind of come into the New World and really kind of state its claim, so to speak, and really made it a mark. So I love the history of food and ingredients and how things have traveled, and really spreading that information as much as possible. That's always something I love to do.
Great. That was a great question. Thank you. It is time. Our session is over, but thank you so much, Eric, for being here. Had a great time.
Mary Claire, thank you so much. You guys were awesome, really fun, light. Thank you so much again for thinking of me. I really hope you guys gained a little bit of insight into my world, but then also how I kind of encourage creatives to use their gift for the greater good. And with me, it's culinary arts and public health, but with you, it can be something else. But again, at the end of the day, whatever it is that gets you going, do it to your best ability, but also, keep in mind that you can also do it to help, the folks around you. So be better for it. And thank you guys so much for it. I really appreciate it.